already, potentially, than we have here. Can't wait to get there. I'm going to turn your attention to about 3 verses of Scripture here found in Acts, the book of Acts, chapter 27. This is a piece of a parcel of the story we're very familiar with, where the old apostle has found himself in the midst of a shipwreck, in the midst of having a problem. Let's start verse 27, on chapter 27. Let's start about, I'll tell you what, let's just read a few more. Let's read from 39. It says, "And when it was day, they knew not the land, and they discovered a certain creek with a shore, into the which they were minded, if it were possible, to thrust in the ship. When they had taken up the anchors, they committed themselves unto the sea. They loosed the rudder bands and hoisted up the mainsail to the wind and made toward the shore. Falling into a place where 2 seas met, they ran the ship aground. The forepart stuck fast and remained unmovable, but the hinder part was broken with the violence of the waves. And the soldiers' counsel was to kill the prisoners, lest any of them should swim out and escape. But the centurion," I wonder if this was the same centurion that asked Jesus to heal his servant. Just a question. "But the centurion, willing to save Paul, kept them from their purpose, and commanded that they which could swim should cast themselves first into the sea and get to land. And the rest, some on boards, and some on broken pieces of the ship. And so it came to pass that they escaped all safe to land." I want to preach from you the title this morning, "Life's Bits and Pieces." Bits and pieces. Put the Bible down and promise to preach me for a little bit. I hope I am not long. I do not feel like this needs to have a whole lot of preaching, but it needs a whole lot of understanding. Hallelujah. You can be seated. I will set the stage by telling you how I got to this particular story and got to this particular sermon. I spent last part of last week down at a place called Willow Oak. It's a little park there on Toledo Bend, and my dad and I have been camping there for, he said 40 years, but I told him he was quite mistaken. Probably closer to 50 years we've been going there. And I've spent many days and nights, and we fished all of that area. In fact, the lake house that he bought after he retired is just not very far from there. And so we spent some time there, and my dad has got to the place where his hunting days are pretty much done. He can still camp a little bit. He's got a chair to sit in. And we went out that Monday, or I got to come in on Monday. We went out that Tuesday evening. He wanted to go hunting. And so he said, "Look," he said, "I'm just going to get up on the bank a little ways and find me a tree to lean against." And we planned to only be there a couple of hours at the most. And so I went not very far. I could still hear his phone ringing. There was a time he would have shot me with my phone ringing. But we had no more got out the boat. His went ringing. I didn't say nothing. Let it ring. So I walked. I could still hear it. And I found me a tree, good comfortable tree. One of them kind of trees where you kind of got where you can sit back into it, kind of like a recliner. Just got that perfect lean back. Had a good vine out there in front. I could kick my heels up. See, I didn't have second with me, so I didn't have to walk. I could sit and hunt. And I really was, don't cast stones, I really wasn't interested in squirrels. I was looking for bigger game. And I hadn't been there but maybe 30 or 40 minutes, I guess, and my phone rang, mine which was on silent. And I said, "Who is that?" I finally got it out of my pocket, and it quit ringing. It was Dad, so I called him up. I heard his ringing over. Ring, 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 turn the ringer off, did he? He said, son, he said, man, he said, I've had about all this I can take. I said, headed your way. So I went over there and he was easing out of the woods. He said, man, he said, I sat down. Like I said, I couldn't find me a right log. He said, I sat down on the tree, had to crawl to another tree to get up. He said, I don't know. He said, this may be my last hunt trip. So I said, don't worry about it, my friend. I said, that's the reason we bring squirrels that we've already killed. And we went back to camp, and for the next 2 days, we didn't move out of 2 chickens. And we cooked, and we sat around, and we reminisced, and we talked. And my dad is the quintessential dad of 50 years ago. I don't think until the last several years did I ever hear him say, I love you. Certainly no hugging going on. Well, we got ready to go, and I packed up. It was raining. We cooked a little breakfast and got ready to go. And it was a little humorous, but also a little sad. He took a step toward me to give me a hug, but he stopped. Reached down, he shook my hand. Almost got man, he said, I see you. I said, I see you, Dad, I love you. He said, I love you, son. And away he went. Well, I got down the road just a little piece before we got out of the little park there, and he's pulled her over one side. And he had gotten into the ice chest where I had left a few big red zeros. I drank all my Mr. Pibb zeros that I had stolen, and from Sister Marilyn's house. And he had that big red, and he was handed to him, and he said, I figured you might want one of these. Well, I said, man, I tell you what, I kind of forgot about it. I'll take one of them. He said, well, he said, I just want to tell you I appreciate you coming camping. We'll do it again. I said, we'll do it very soon. And he eased back to the truck, got in, away he went. Well, you can call it a vision, you can call it a thought process. I don't care what you call it, but for the next 20 or 30 miles or so, I thought about the relationship of he and I. I also thought about the fact that we already know what his final arrangements are. He wants to be cremated. He wants his remains taken to a particular place on the Sabine River. He wants me to scatter them. And I told him, what if I don't? What if I take them to next to where Mom's buried and put you right next to her? They've been divorced for years. He didn't seem happy with that thought. I said, well, what if I take him down to the bar? I had a lot of fun with him, you know. But I began to think, and in my mind, I saw, just as clear as day, I saw a brown box in my hands. And see, what most people don't know, if you've never seen cremated remains, when people say ashes, they're not really ashes, right? Anybody ever seen cremated remains? They're actually little bits and pieces. The ashes are gone. Basically, you're just left with some very small bits and pieces. And I remember as I held that, I was standing on the riverbank, and I opened it up. And I'm looking at these remains. And I picked one of the small little pieces out. And I thought about, this is all that's left. Right? and threw it out on the sand. The thought struck me that what an interesting concept it is that a life can be reduced to nothing more than the bits and pieces you find in a box. I began to think about what they represented. I began to think about the fact that as I'm going through this in my mind, I was remembering a good time. Maybe working cattle, or I remember a time where I got in the big briar patch, and Dad was riding Cindy at the time. He was about as far as from me to that wall. I was on a horse called CJ, fresh green broke. But I couldn't see him, right? It was so thick. Cattle was right in front of us, and we tried to push him out of his thicket. And I remember CJ got a big, thick vine of some kind, probably 2 inches thick, come right across his chest, and when he kept trying to go forward with it scared him, so he reared up. I got him to come back down, but he went forward again, and when he did this time, he come up, and I remember hitting on the ground so solidly on my back that all the wind was gone. All I could do was, I could hear Dad, who heard me, knew I was in trouble, going, "What's wrong?" I can't answer, right? And I watched the horn of the saddle coming to kill me, and I can't move. The horn, Brother Joe, landed right here. If I had not been on the roping saddle, the swells would have killed me. I heard Daddy coming through the thicket about that time. I remember times of walking through the woods at night with a headlight, deer hunting. I remember walking out behind my grandpa's house and remember shining rabbits and on that improved ryegrass pasture in January and February. You could walk out on a dark night and see 20 and 30 big old swamp rabbits, just their old red eyes just glowing. You go, wow, it's going to be a good night tonight. I remember sitting in his office at DuPont when I worked at DuPont and spending time with the guys at DuPont. I remember fishing trips, and my mind went back and I began to think of those things. I got to thinking about the fact that in that box, the remains, the bits and pieces of a life, are reduced to memories and reduced to things that are important to you. No matter who you are, no matter who it might be in your mind this morning, the thing that stuck out to me was, although it was a small box, there are important things in our lives that matter, that make a difference, that causes things to stick in our brains, and it's important things to you. And what's important to you is not necessarily maybe important as to me, and your important things that's happened in your life are different than the important things that's happened in my life. Nobody lives the same life. Nobody has the same happiness. Nobody has the same problems. Nobody has the same trials. Nobody has the same issues. I thought as I went down the road, I thought of the times, and look, I'm not here, please, don't get me wrong. I'm just trying to set the stage of why I was thinking the way I was thinking. But I remember leaning on the window in my bedroom as I watched him leave the driveway. He had thrown the chest across the room, and my mom had run into my bedroom and said, "Save me, son, he's going to kill me." And the next morning, I watched his taillights of his truck leave my driveway. I thought to myself, I wonder if he's ever coming back. I remember pulling a gun on my dad, sitting in the kitchen. They had been fussing, they had been fighting. He walked in the kitchen, rage on his face. I had a little 20 gauge Stevens breakdown shotgun. I loaded it. We walked in to the kitchen. I said, I believe it's time for you to go. He said, I'm not going anywhere. I closed the shotgun. I pulled the hammer back. I said, yes, you are, one way or the other. I watched him leave that day. Imprint in our brain. I watched him shout in church. I watched him help the men with the barbecues. I remember him dressed up in a tie suit going to church. Remember a lot of things. 55 years of memories reduced to bits and pieces in a box. I got down the road a little further and obviously very emotional 20, 30 miles. I wept. I remember. And I got to thinking about all of these things. And I got to thinking about what was coming. And the thought struck me. Thought came to me out of the clear blue. About the importance of our bits and pieces. The things you're going to leave behind in a box for somebody else. And I began to think about that, not in a funeral kind of way, not in a way of sadness. I began to think about the fact that I still have a chance that the box I leave behind of my bits and pieces, I get to choose what they are. And the things that I have going on in my life today they're going to morph into something one day that somebody may remember about me. You're going to have things people are going to remember about you. And what are they going to say about you? And what are they going to remember about you? And what are they looking at you today and observing you, Brother Joe, and watching you, because people are watching you. People are observing you. And we're making these bits and pieces in our lives. I begin to think about the fact that, man, there's a whole lot of stuff in that box that was good memories, and they were fantastic memories. And you go, but some of them were so sad, and some of them were horrific in many ways. But can I tell you something? I begin to think about the little woman or the beggar at the doorway going, I'm looking for the crumbs off the master's table. The little woman who looked at Jesus and said, but even the dogs get the crumbs. And I begin to think about the fact that there's an important principle about small things. God is a fixer of bits and pieces. God takes care of the bits and pieces. God, if you trust God with the problem, God will always work it out. If you trust God with the things that you just in your brain you don't know an answer for, the smallest thing to somebody else, but the biggest thing to you. God deals in fixing broken hearts and broken spirits and broken minds and broken. I begin to think about the fact that shouldn't be alive today. I shouldn't be breathing today. I've done some crazy stuff in my lifetime. I've done some stupid stuff. I should be dead today. But I'm not. Why? Because a small mistake that I might have made in a moment of ignorance, or maybe a moment of not thinking, God protected me anyway and kept me safe and said, I'm not done with you. You still got something you need to do. I'm going to protect you from yourself. I look in a box, a life of bits and pieces, and we sometimes look at people and go, you know what? They're done. It's over with. There's nothing left for them. They're broken all apart. They're unfixable. Let me tell you something. God has never found a heart and a life that He can't fix. There's no such thing as a broken life. There's no such thing as a broken. God does not deal in the broken. He deals in the whole. He makes things. We may be happy with the crumbs. We can eat the crumbs. But the crumbs from His table is better than anything from any other table sitting on top of it. Christians get a bad rap. Christians get a real bad rap because, well, you know, you can't do this and you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't do that. Don't do this, don't do that. Some folks want me to preach hellfire and brimstone. There's a hell. Don't want to go there. Brother Joe, you don't want to go to hell. That's a bad place. Woo! Hot. Hot, 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 hot. You never died so hot. That's crazy. You won't go there? No, not me. And you know what? I get it. And I preached about hell just the other day. Y'all got 6 months for it to begin. Maybe not 6 months, but maybe. You never know. I'll preach it next week. I don't know. You want to know something? As hot as hell is, the place I don't want to go, you want to know what I'm thankful for and what I'm happy about? Is He made a way to go to a place that was not hell, called heaven, and prepared it. And He prepared it for me, who is broken, who just has a life of bits and pieces, who doesn't have something that you may look at and go, oh, that's an admirable life. Man, I want to do that. That's impressive right there. No, you look at the box I leave behind, there's going to be all kind of things done wrong, not done right, messed up here, messed up there, didn't do this right, didn't do that right, didn't think this right, didn't think that right. But God, in His infinite mercy and His grace, He is a mender of those things that I don't do right, and He makes sure that they turn out the way they're supposed to turn out. Your life this morning can be in shambles, but I can tell you that God has a better way. He has a better plan, and He can do it when you can't do it. We sometimes think that, and probably most of the time it's our fault. I can see you get up the steps without it. We make mistakes. We fail. Humanity is a frail thing. Humanity doesn't always do the right thing. Christians don't always make the right decisions. Christians don't always say the right things. Christians don't always act the right way. Christians don't always do the thing that you think is it. And in fact, most of the time we're so foreign to what this Bible is trying to get us to live, the life that we're supposed to live. We're so wrong, and most of the time that we don't even know it when we're wrong. We're that wrong. None of us deserve to be dead. I began to think, I got to thinking, Why does this life that I have lived, why has it happened the way that it has? Why did those two people decide to drive to Fort Worth, Texas, walk into an adoption agency, and out of the 15 or 20 kids just sitting there ready to be picked out that needs a home, why did they say, we'll take that one? And then on top of all of that, why did they divorce? Could I tell you, if you're a kid here today and your parents have divorced, it is not your fault. Could I tell you, if you're an adult here today and you still fight that, it's not your fault they divorced. They made the decision, and whatever it was that caused it, that's their decision to have. Don't blame yourself for the problem of somebody else. Stop doing that to yourself and understand that there's a reason for you going through what you're doing. But you want to know something? With all of the things that happened, you know what they did? They took me to church. First time I went, the first time there was a service after I went home, they took me to church. I grew up under church pews. I laid under church pews while Mom would shout and Dad would run the aisles. I laid under there and watched the high heels of the ladies that would kill a kid if they ever got stepped on. And I survived that. I survived bobby pins flinging through the air. I survived all that. Wound up going to church, getting the Holy Ghost and baptized in Jesus' name. Well, why is that important? Because that's part of the bits and pieces of my life. And I can tell you that God has a plan for the bits and pieces in your life. You may not understand. I didn't understand it at the time, but there was a plan in place. I can tell you more horror stories than I want. This month I've been talking about men in my life, preachers in my life that I appreciate. Fell behind a few days. I'll get called up this evening and put somebody else on there. But in the bits and pieces in my life, it wasn't for those like Brother O'Brien, Brother Sullivan, Brother Bradford, Brother Murray Burr, Brother Dunn, Brother Shue, Brother B.A. Spells, Brother Verbal Bean back years and years and years ago. That Brother Richard Hurd, maybe he's a lofty rocker today, but that's a man who I prayed through under, who I give him credit for that. Why? Because the bits and pieces of my life have a totality. The bits and pieces of my life matter. The bits and pieces of my life have turned into something that maybe on today in a little town called Price, Texas, maybe my bits and pieces were meant to tell somebody this morning, God's got your back. God's got you where He wants you. Your bits and pieces matter. Somebody someday is going to open a box. And what you do in your life that you live, you can't be ashamed of the life you live. You just got to understand God has a plan. Sister Mary Jo, I can't give answers as to why things happen. All I can do is I can say they happen. Sister Shannon, I wish I had answers, but I don't. I look at my box and go, where's the answer there? My mind goes back to the hand of Brother Wendell Kingley, Brother Harper Gillis, Brother Bradford, on my shoulder in the darkest days of my life. And would simply say, Randy, you can make it. You can make it, son. It don't matter what's happening, you can make it. Could I tell somebody here as we stand there? Could I tell somebody this morning? You can make it. Could I tell somebody His life feels like it's all broken apart. But there's nothing. It's just rocks. It's just bits. There's nothing of value there. It's done. It's over. My mind, I see God. I see God as He spent 6 heavenly days, or 5 heavenly days. He looks around, He says, it's not quite done yet. I watch Him kneel down. I don't cross theological swords with me. This is my sword. I wonder how many angels. I wonder if Gabriel, Michael, some big powerful angels. I wonder if they were there. They were admiring the cows. Maybe they was admiring that beautiful quarter horses that He created. Maybe they was admiring that beautiful white river bull, big black hub on it. Maybe they was looking at that Bill Platypus, I don't know. But in my mind, I can see them talking and discussing about all the birds and the trees and the sea and the land and the light and the dark. And I vision God kneeling down. I watch His hands get bits and pieces of dirt. I wonder what Michael and Gabriel was thinking. I watch Him gather those bits and pieces of dirt. I wonder if maybe there's some rock or two in there, a stick. Maybe there's a whatever. After a few heavenly minutes, however long it might have been, He's gathered all those bits and pieces. And He kneels down. And He breathes the breath of life into bits and pieces. My spirit urges something today. These altars are open. As they see something